We are utterly devastated that you will need to be bold, but we have been bestowed with an opportunity. Listen, I indicated in my retirement crisis video a long time ago that crypto is the gift. It was around 2016 or thereabouts. And that present is the one that never ends. Everyone has an equal opportunity to advance. Avoid squandering this opportunity at any costs. It was common in the last cycle, and this time around I'm attempting to lend a hand. Possess the primary assets. Stay on top of your game. Feel no fear of missing out. Stay away from leverage. Resist the urge to enable yourself to invest, lose money, and attempt to make 100x your initial investment. Just set aside 10% of your bag or 20% if you're truly a DGEN. Rest assured, your other belongings are safe. One piece of advice that Real Vision co-founder and CEO Raoul has been stressing to investors for the past year is how to be ahead of what he calls the fourth industrial revolution, or the exponential age. When this macro master noticed a number of important phenomena, he knew it was a new era. Asset prices are being recklessly inflated due to central banks creating money at unprecedented levels. Electronic shopping, driverless vehicles, video conferencing, telemedicine, and delivery robots are among the 10 revolutionary innovations that the industry is hastening to embrace. Discovered that when examining these technologies in relation to the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, it appeared as though they were all in a bubble. Nevertheless, this perception was solely fueled by the dollar's substantial depreciation. Based on these findings, Powell predicted that over the next decade, the values of these technologies will continue to rise at an exponential rate. This is why he keeps telling people to get in on this revolution early before prices go crazy. According to Powell, the world's main economies realized in 2008 that demography and productivity, the two most important variables for GDP growth, were either flat or falling. This realization led to a global economic reset. At the same time, debt has kept piling up, eventually surpassing 100% of GDP for numerous economies in the time after. According to Powell, increasing productivity is the only option to save the global economy from its impending GDP catastrophe, which is being caused by central banks' unbridled money printing. For this reason, the macro expert is exceedingly enthusiastic on two essential asset classes, Bitcoin and the exponential age. A key concept in the Everything Code is realizing that the bank's balance sheet will reflect the fact that interest on debt is being paid for by issuing further debt. It was also realizing that everything in the world is now completely cyclical. As a whole, the ISM cycle is faultless. Debt maturity is the real driver of this incredible 4-year cycle, which is actually 3.5 years long. We learned that after 2008, a year that was both a tremendous reset and a debt jubilee. As is generally known, things started to look up. The world's leading central banks have all decided to stop paying interest. 0% interest is that. They reason that paying interest would be unnecessary while they work to restore their financial standing. To fix their financial standing, they refinanced in the 3 to 5 year range, which set in motion the current perfect cycle. Everything revolves around this cycle, which includes the presidential cycle, the Bitcoin halving cycle, and the Everything Code cycle. This cycle, the liquidity cycle, often known as the debasement cycle, is the reason I've been so successful at forecasting market direction. It's a singular focus that propels assets. When you do, you'll have a good grasp of the next level. To be fair, this is hardly an isolated incident. It was very much like the 1950s. On this occasion, it was not a population bust and the resulting debts that were the reason. Obviously, WWII and its associated debts were the source the previous time around. In any case, how did the governments act? Financial repression, or yield curve control, was instituted in the United States. This is equivalent to bolstering the balance sheet. Interest payments were thus kept low. They reorganized debts, which affected the economy. Like now, the economy becomes fully cyclical. Asset prices correlated entirely, and it's nearly identical, so they ripped higher, corrected every cycle as they're doing now. So that whole 1950s thing actually plays out perfectly in the equity market. When I look at the chart of now versus the 1950s, it looks very similar. When I zoom out, it kind of suggests what's going ahead. You see, in the 1950s, that piece of magic was to keep financial repression going, keep the cycle going until productivity increased. And eventually, productivity increased, financial oppression helped to wear down the debts. And over time, the economy took off and we had the 50s and the 60s and then into the 70s. And that was a magic period for GDP growth because of what they did. And they're repeating it now. It's very clear to me that that is the game. That is the game. That is the game the Japanese are playing, the game the Europeans are playing. Everybody's playing the same game. So we know the game. We know the basement of currency is the other game. So here we know that if we don't play their game, you're going to get FK'd. If you invest in assets that don't beat the balance sheets, the 15% a year, you're going to be losing money every year. So it's really important that that is rate. And when you look at that, you suddenly realize that most assets don't beat it. The SP doesn't really beat it. Gold certainly doesn't. Real estate unlevered doesn't. Most things don't beat that debasement. So if you invest in other things, you're going to lose money. And that's a hard lesson for people to learn. Most people don't understand this simple fact is you are getting poorer by investing in these things. And that was the big realization that got to me. It's like, oh my God, my whole macro world has been turned upside down because everything we thought was the investable asset became the non-investable asset. And everything we thought was non-investable because it was riskier became the asset. Because when you look at everything versus the Fed balance sheet as a simple example, there's only two assets that have gone up. And I've talked about this at length before. It's technology and it's crypto. Since I first started talking about Bitcoin, it's up 450,000%. Most people just still don't get why I care about this. It's because it's the only way I see to truly give yourself the opportunity. And this is, you can see this behavior of investing in risky things by the speculative economy that has taken hold that people can't understand. It makes total sense to me. If your future is FED because you're young, you are going to do what you're supposed to do, buy your 401,000. That kind of locks it in because it's not underperforming the balance sheet. It's not outperforming. So that's savings. Okay, I get that. And it's better than saving in cash, but everybody knows they can't get ahead. So people have become speculative. Speculative is okay if it's not at the casino. If it's in a secular trending market like crypto technology, go for it. Just do it in the right way. So we see the rise of not only tech investing on Robinhood, but option investing on tech in Robinhood. That's the way the lottery ticket economy, where people just don't feel like they have a choice. There's no way for them to get the 100, 200, 300 grand that they need to get in the property ladder or to feel like they've got the savings that they need. So people are taking bets, but in a secular market, actually pretty intelligent risk-taking and options are pretty intelligent too. Over time, if you get it right, you have the right tools, you learn how to invest. One of the core things that we do at Real Vision is try and teach people how to do this. You can make money. Crypto has been even easier because the sheer magnitude of the moves means you just buy and hold it. You just own the highest quality assets and do nothing. I mean, doing nothing is really that easy. It has been basically giving you about 100% a year returns for the last 7 years, 8 years to actually higher if you go back earlier in Bitcoin's time. But if you basically look at that, you're going to get somewhere between 80 and 200% returns depending where you are on the cycle over time. So these are the compounded returns. These aren't just, you're in it because obviously some years you're like 500% returns and other times you'll make down 70%. People don't get their heads around, but this is actually the best risk-adjusted reward asset of all time. Fidelity have this beautiful chart of all of these dot plots of risk-adjusted rewards assets, and it's like, tech is quite high and some markets are high, and then cyclical stuff like oil and stuff is low risk-adjusted returns over time. It doesn't really do anything. All of this SP all in this, and then you go and there's a blank paper, and somewhere right at the top is a dot that says Bitcoin. It's an alien. We have never been given an asset like crypto that has this risk reward by any yardstick, drawdown versus, drawdown risk, volatility adjusted. Any way you want to look at this asset, as long as it's over a period of time, it's by far and away the best asset we've ever been given. It's also the best performing asset of all time and remains the best performing asset every 4 years of that everything code cycle. Crypto's